there's going to be some things that happen at the property that she's going to be like, hey, this is happening. I'm not fixing it.
Yeah.
Because it's not her job to care about that kind of stuff. Like, I care that my snowplow guy, he like pushed snow and like ruined where the mulch is at my property. I'm like, that doesn't look good. Does he care? No. He plowed the snow and he left. And so like now I'm the one who has to go and fix the thing, but it's like only somebody's job to operate within a specific scope, and only one person cares about all of the scope.
Yeah.
And that's you.
Yep. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode 2 of our relaunch of the podcast that is yet to be named.
Yet to be named. Yeah. We'll figure that out, hopefully, in the next month.
Yeah, add it to the list. Today's episode, I think we're going to go through exactly what we went through these past couple of weeks since our last recorded episode, because there's always drama in our lives around B&Bs. And then we're going to focus this episode on answering some of our favorite Tip Tuesday questions that come through on Instagram. If you guys don't follow us on Instagram, we do a Tip Tuesday question box every single Tuesday where we give away free coaching. So you guys can ask us anything under the sun, anything B&B related, business related, partnering related, the whole 9 yards. And so we've picked some of our favorite Tip Tuesday questions to answer in long format, because sometimes Instagram slides on stories are not enough.
I know. I'm constantly like, I read the answers to the Tip Tuesday questions, which is funny because like I know the answers obviously, but I'll hold it down so that I can read the whole thing, and then I'm still like going back. So it's nice that we have the highlight of the answers, but it is like a lot of information most of the time.
Yes. And there's always so much more context that I want to give on those questions, but we only have so much time. So let's start with your week. How did the last 2 weeks go? What kind of drama are you in with your B&Bs?
Well, I'm trying to think of anything other than the Christmas guest. I don't think there really was drama outside of my Christmas guest. So it's always, I feel like, on like Christmas Eve at night when nobody would be able to go out to the property to fix it immediately. We get a message from our guest that they showed up and the hot tub lid was open. Now, anybody who owns a hot tub at a B&B knows that the latches for a hot tub break within a week of you having guests. Like, people just cannot seem to figure it out. It doesn't really matter what kind of the latches it is. And so ours have been broken. So it gets blown open sometimes. Well, I guess it got blown open when they were there. But also, my cleaner didn't fill the hot tub to the level that she was supposed to, apparently, according to the photos. So my guest is basically messaging being like, hey, the hot tub is not filled, and we've been filling buckets full of water and taking it out to the hot tub, like filling it in the kitchen and taking them out to the hot tub. They're like, is there any better way to do this? And there's literally a spigot next to the hot tub, right next to it. And I'm like, okay, it's winterized, like there's a little bag over it and whatever, but it's not turned off by any means. And so I'm trying not to like jump in. I'm trying to like let the team handle it because they know that that stuff is there. But they were like, okay, like, can you explain to us like the hot tub or whatever? And so I just messaged him. I'm like, hey, there's a spigot right there. There's a hose in the garage. Like, just tell them that they can use it. So the lady goes, I guess, and says, okay, thank you. We'll fill it up. And then we get a message at like 7 p.m. on Christmas Eve. And she's like, there's no water. And that's it. Not there's no water in the spigot outside. Just there's no water. And I was like,
thank you.
Panicking. I'm like wrapping Oz's presents with my phone next to me, opened in VRBO messages, just refreshing and refreshing, because the team immediately responds to this one. And they're like, I'm so sorry. Is there no water in the whole house, or is it just that specific faucet outside? Literally 2.5 hours later, I've been sitting staring at my phone for 2.5 hours waiting for these people to respond. And they were like, oh, it's just the one that's out there. We'll just let it go. Like, everything else is so great. Thank you so much. So that, whatever, there was like maybe a few little things that they like left after the fact. They like messaged, they wanted us to have a cheese grater in the kitchen, just like little things, which things like that I really appreciate when guests leave that kind of feedback. I'm like, oh, didn't even think to put a cheese grater. Like, nobody's ever asked for one before, but let me add it to my list of things to add the next time I go up to the property. Like, it's not dire, but I like hearing things that people will need. But then she was like, don't worry, we're still going to leave you 5 stars. Like, the hot tub issue wasn't a big deal. Well, then the next guest checks in and the hot tub is left open or it's blown open again. And she's talking about how it was like not up to temperature. And I'm like, well, of course it's not up to temperature. And then the back door, apparently somebody broke the lock on the slider to the back door. And then one of the screens is off one of the sliders. And so it's just like right around the holidays. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the screen door can be like popped back in. I got to get somebody out there to fix the lock. We clearly need to come up with a solution for the hot tub lid, but it's just like stacking up right around the holidays. And I'm like, it's Christmas. Like, I'm going to have to pay a premium to get somebody out there to fix these problems. And none of them are really dire enough to send somebody out while the guest is there. Right. And so, whatever. But the cleaner was able to fill the hot tub with the spigot next to the hot tub in between those guests. So,
Okay.
apparently the water was working there and they just couldn't figure it out, but whatever.
Is it one of those spigots that you like pull up, like those, like the one that's near my parents' barn that you like pull up and, or it's a turn on one?
It's a turn on one. Like it's attached to the house and there's just like a bag over it to like a winterized bag.
Because like the pull up ones, it's like you pull them up and you wait like a minute and nothing happens because the water is like so far from the well.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
Yeah.
Weird. I hate the ambiguous messages, especially at night from guests where you're like, the water's not working. And you're like, where? Be specific.
I know.
How can I help you? You give me no information, no context.
There's no water. I'm like, what?
And
What
then
do you mean
ghosted
there's
me.
no water?
Yeah.
2.5 hours. But yeah, and then the next guest, when like she saw that the doors were broken. And of course, like to me as a host, I'm panicking when I see like image sent. And she sent like 4 of them. But as a guest, when you walk in, you want to send all of those photos because the last thing that you want is your host thinking that you broke stuff. So like they're not trying to freak you out. These people were like, none of this is taking away from our experience. Like we're having such a great time. But to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, 4 images that they sent? That's so crazy. But
we're doomed.
To them, that's the first thing that a guest does is they walk through to see if anything's broken or anything's wrong.
Yeah.
So they can take photos and send it to you so you know that they didn't do it. And so
it's always Christmas Eve.
I know. I was like Christmas Eve, 7 p.m. I'm like, I have a really good relationship with my handyman. He's great. And he has gone out in all kinds of scenarios in the middle of the night to shovel somebody's car out for me. But like, I don't want to pay him a premium and I really don't want to ruin his Christmas Eve.
I feel that's so hard. Yeah. It's like last year, literally 11 p.m. Christmas Eve, we get a message from our guest saying that the water's not working in the whole house. Like, you're just having PTSD from my experience last Christmas Eve.
Literally.
Luckily, ours was just a tripped breaker, but the guests were like, 11 p.m., they're like, we just finished our Christmas meal 2 hours ago. We are going to need the bathroom soon.
Oh, no.
You're just like, nothing's open at midnight on Christmas Eve.
I know. And I immediately am like, okay, where do you fix the water in my house? Because like I know if I'm there, like I can walk and go and find it immediately. But in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, how do I describe to them where to go and fix the water? And I don't understand. And like I'm gonna need them to troubleshoot it with me because I can't get anybody out there. But luckily, 2.5 hours later, she messaged back, and it was just the spigot next to the hot tub.
Dude, yes.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Can you imagine? That would have been the worst.
I had no guest drama on Christmas Eve this year. Or if I did, Fede's team, I didn't look. Fede's team didn't tell me. Like,
I think I need to turn my Airbnb notifications off.
Yes.
I feel like I'm a little too plugged into it. And I like, the issue that I have is I will see the messages and then let Fede's team handle it because I know that they know what they're doing. But I'll just sit there and watch. Like
so you're going through
that's unhealthy.
Yeah, you're carrying the burden even though you don't have to be the one to like solve it.
Yeah, so I think that I need to have that. I just need to turn the notifications off.
I feel that too because at the beginning of this year, like for those of you listening that don't know, we handed off all of our property management at the end of last year. So this is the first full year that we've gone through not managing our B&Bs. And when I first handed it over, I did the same thing. Like I was watching all the time. Anything that they did that wasn't exactly how I would handle it, like a message would be sent because I'm not like you and being patient and being like, I'm sure they'll figure it out. I'm like, they won't. Like just immediately like freaking out, which definitely like exhausted Fede very quickly. Thank God he's patient. But then at the end of this year, like after taking a step back and just being like, I have to detach myself from this. And me thinking that like, well, if I'm not doing it, it's not going to get done as well. and then looking at our final numbers for the year, and I'm like, wow, every single one of our properties made 20 grand more. Like every single one of them made 20 grand more than they did the year before. And nobody handled things exactly how I would handle them. And yet we still made more profit. So
Yeah.
lessons to me, I guess.
Yeah, I know. It's like I like watching the messages because if there is a question that I know I've never answered for them before, I'm like, oh, I can get them an answer very quickly. But then if it's one that I know they have an answer to, I'm just like watching it like a hawk. And I'm like, Emily, don't be on their case about it. Like they know what they're doing. Don't be micromanaging them.
Yeah.
But then I'm just staring. And so, and like all of the ones that they haven't had answers to, they don't even come and ask me because that's the point.
Yeah.
And they know that that's the point and they just figure it out. And I'm like sitting there and I'm like, why aren't they asking me? I'm like, oh, maybe because they're problem solving, the thing that you hired them to do.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. It's crazy. I know. I would sometimes I'm like, I bet Fede just thinks it's so funny when I message him and I'm like, hey. So I saw this message come through and he's like, Emily, shut up.
Like literally let us do our jobs.
I know.
Can't, sorry.
I can't.
Well, my drama last week had nothing to do with our guests or our properties, but had everything to do with regulation and an orange Cadillac. So we have a property, and I think I talked about this on the last podcast as well. We have a property that's been shut down since September. The city made everything that's not in B2 zoning illegal to be a B&B, and our property butts up next to a bunch of B2 properties. And so over the last several months, as we prepared for this first of 3 meetings, we've like gone around and, gotten letters from our neighbors and the downtown businesses and developed an argument as to why they should let us rezone. And, so that meeting happened on the 23rd, and we had hired an attorney for that meeting that was a local attorney that had relationships with the city council members and the zoning board, and just, the steps of getting the zoning done correctly, I think, are pretty straightforward. Like, I don't know that this is a situation that, like, maybe the average person would hire an attorney for, but we did do it wrong originally. So we've proven. So in that process, I think now I know how to do it right. But I wanted the city to see that we were handling this professionally, and I wanted another connection with someone who is close knit with the city, and someone who, with all of my nerves going into presenting this, that could just be like the calm in the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And the morning of, so we celebrate Christmas on the 23rd with my family, just because it works out better for my brother who's married, and he sees his in-laws on Christmas Day. And so it's 23rd, we're like celebrating. I have like, to try and be plugged in with my family on the 23rd and be present, and then knowing that this meeting is happening in the evening. And so I'm just nervous all day for this meeting. But first thing in the morning, I get a phone call from the assistant of the attorney that we hired, and she's like, hey, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the attorney that you hired is stuck in Japan.
Like, of all places.
I'm like, cool, like, what's next steps? And she's like, well, I'm going to be presenting for him. And like, no offense to this lawyer, I think she is actually a lawyer. I don't even think she's his assistant, but I think they kind of function in that way where like they're both lawyers, but one is very good at the back end and one is very good at like being the Harvey Specter. She just can't get a sentence out in 10 minutes. Like, she is you want somebody to come into a situation while they're the attorney just being Mr. or Mrs. Suave. Like, calm in the storm. This is the facts. These are the regulations. This is why. Like, get everyone organized, get everyone confident to make a decision. And this lady is just one that, like, adds chaos.
Yeah. The thing that I think is funny in that situation is because she's the back end, she probably knows the most about it.
Yeah.
And she's just nervous presenting it.
Well, I thought that up until, and I thought that as well. That's what I was like, okay, well, at least she'll be able to keep my facts straight, right? Mm-hmm. Like, at least we'll have the most information going into it, and I can be Mrs. Suave in the situation. And Ethan's there as well, who's great at public speaking. So I was like, it'll probably be fine. So all day I'm just like stressed, thinking, and she's like, oh, by the way, you should have something prepared to present. And I'm like, I asked you 3 weeks ago if we needed something to prepare, and you told me to send something to you so you could prepare it, and then that we would go off of what you prepared. And like, I have the email of that exchange, and she's like, oh, well, I didn't prepare anything. And I'm like, Okay.
Oh no.
I guess I'll spend my Christmas day preparing something. Sure, will ruin my holiday.
Yeah.
Um, so like my parents were super patient. My family was really patient with me on Christmas Day, where we like took an hour to like open up presents and have a meal. But then the rest of the day, I'm like putting something together. Like, let's make me look just a hair more professional in this situation. And then we drive to Cadillac, and it's like snowstorm, awful road conditions, like just like I hate winter, and most of my hate for winter comes from driving in winter. And
Yeah.
so the whole way up, I'm like blasting music, just like trying to get into a headspace that's not like just pure anxiety from what we're about to do, plus the drive up there. And we walk into this lawyer's office, and she's like, Sarah, I just don't know how today's gonna go. I don't know what we're walking into. Just immediate like chaos. And she's like, they published an article today and it's not good. It's not good. And I like, she hands me this newspaper and it's like front page of like Cadillac's local paper.
Love that.
And it's the first 2 pages. Like it's a long article.
All publicity is good publicity.
I know I'm like, the Carwells. Slide that in there. But she was like, none of this is good. And I like start reading the article, and like the first 2 paragraphs are like, these people ran it past when they were supposed to be. They were running an illegal operation. They didn't listen to the city. The city opened up a lawsuit, like all the negative stuff in probably the first 2 paragraphs. And then the next page and a half was just like, but one of the owners really took the time to like develop relationships with the city members and like develop relationships with neighbors. And it was like way more good than bad.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, why did you like greet me with this chaos? Like everything in here, other than what everyone already knew, is good. Like it's a good turn of events. Like I'm like, okay, why didn't you like use this as a like you should feel confident going into this meeting? And so we get into the meeting and she starts speaking first, and she just is like, I don't even know what she said. She didn't get a complete thought out, and there were like 2 other things that needed to be presented before she presented our case. And like during the other 2 people that were like going through a similar situation of like really wanting the result that they were asking for, she's like shuffling papers and like making noise, and like everybody keeps getting distracted by her. And I'm just like, oh, I can't believe I'm paying for this.
Mhm.
And so she speaks, and it just like she doesn't say anything that like would make people feel one way or the other. And so I just get up there and I'm like literally shaking. Like I can like feel my hands shaking, I can feel my legs shaking. And I just start like pouring my heart out to the city council, and I just was like, whether you guys let me do this or don't let me do this, like this property will rot if you don't rezone it. Like it was for sale as a residential property before we bought it. We came in and bought it, and it's been for sale for the last several months, and not a single buyer in either case scenario wanted it as a full-time home. Like, if you don't want this to just become an eyesore for the community, yada yada. And so I just got through all of my thoughts, and I was like looking at the city council's faces, and all of them are like 75 years old, like all of them are my grandparents' age.
Mhm.
And they're all just like smiling ear to ear. And I'm like, I think I crushed it. I think I
That
got
is a
it.
good feeling.
And so it was a unanimous yes, which was great. But they were very vocal about the fact that the next 2 meetings are going to be much more difficult than this one. They think that like all of our haters in the city didn't come because it was Christmas Eve.
Mhm.
Um, so we'll see, but it was a huge win. We do have somebody who's moving forward, who put an offer in on the Cadillac property at a very discounted rate, that wants to rent it as a short-term rental, but would have to go through all the same things that we are going through. So if they end up purchasing it, like I'm going to see the project through, like I'm going to be at those meetings whether we're the owners of the property or not. But let's say that we do get the result that we want and we sold it in the interim, like that buyer just got a Carwell special.
Yes.
Which great for them, but it's been a good learning lesson overall. But yeah, I'm optimistic, but we've still got a little ways to go. But that city council meeting last week really took it out of me.
Oh my gosh, I know. Mine was like very small scale compared to that, but I was shaking standing in front of them. And one thing, I know we don't love, like, I think there's this reputation that the older population like is super against short-term rentals and we just don't even want to talk to them about it. But I will say when I did mine, I like led with the fact that I'm not a public speaker and that I get nervous. So I was like, I wrote things down, like, so if
Yeah.
I'm looking down, whatever. And I swear it's like they started looking at me like their daughter or their granddaughter or something.
Yes.
And so like they were like, "You're doing great. Thank you so much." Like just like encouraging me, and I was like, "Okay. Thank you." Like
Slay.
it's so nice, but just like I don't know, I'm like playing into it. It's not very women empowerment of me, but I'm like playing into like the, "Oh yeah, I'm just like your daughter. Like
Yes.
please favor me, whatever." Because
I'm
it really is
literally
like
just a girl.
yeah, it's just like a very political like relationship game.
Yes.
They get to decide whatever really they want
Yeah.
based on their personal opinion. And so you have, even though like there is technically legalities involved, a lot of the legalities come from their personal opinions. And so just play it up a little bit. But
Yeah. Yeah,
if
it's
your
so true.
haters do come to the next meeting, I will heckle people. Like I'll go to the meeting.
I'm so
I have
excited.
no problem.
I'm excited and I'm nervous. I honestly think that I might host a happy hour mixer before the meeting at the property and like get
Ooh.
everyone who's like not a hater, who wants to see the inside of the property, who would love to network with us, to like come, have champagne, like get excited, get them all wound up to support us. And then I mean, the city council members that came and pulled me aside afterward because I was like, please give me advice. Like, this is my first time doing this. Like, I could be totally botching this. If there's like a clear, like, home run way to handle this, just tell me and I'll do it.
Mhm.
And so I had a couple of them pull me aside, and that was their biggest piece of advice is they were like, bring people. Like, bring your army. Like, you've developed one, you've gotten letters from one, you've developed a support system, you have people who want this property to run as a short-term rental, whether it's you or the next guy. Bring all those people. And I was like, okay, all right, I can do that. So we'll see. We'll see.
Nice.
We'll
How
see if I
exciting,
can.
though.
I know if I can get my way, even with the obnoxious amount of publicity, that negative publicity that we've had on that property. I'll feel like quite a champ. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah, people are going to hate it even more. It's going to be awesome.
I know, and it's beautiful. Like it. Look, I could argue till I'm blue in the face why that property has to be a short-term rental, but
Yeah, people have to go look it up if you're listening to this episode. There is no other function for that other
Right.
than an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast, but like the same thing, right?
Yes.
Like bed and breakfasts just operate a little bit differently, but like it has to be commercial
Yeah.
in general. Like
Yeah.
if that's the stipulation that they're giving is that it's commercial, that house cannot stay residentially zoned.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Well, and one of the city council members that came up to me afterward, he was like, "Don't use that argument. Like, don't say that it has to be a short-term rental." He was like, because there's another few properties. Like, I don't know what brought money into Cadillac back in the day that like resulted in some of the properties that are there being so extravagant, but there are some really extravagant properties that are like in residential areas, like properties that are just copy and paste of our property that aren't as close to downtown, that are like way in the residential area, that are currently for sale in the market that people want to B and B.
Mm-hmm.
And so their suggestion is that like if I make that argument, then the other side of that argument is like, well, why can't like these properties are going to rot? And I'm like, well, they will. Like what else are they
Yeah.
going to be? Like if you don't want them to rot, then you're going to have to make exceptions for properties of that status. But they're saying that like they don't want to open up that can of worms, that they just want this to be like an obvious, like it butts up to B2 zones. Like it is a natural progression of the city expanding, which would be, making more B2 zoning. So yeah, although I agree with you, they're like, don't say it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well,
okay. Yes,
okay.
sir. Yes,
Fine.
sir. I will.
Whatever's gonna get me my yes is
Yeah.
fine by me.
Yeah, you tell me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just the local drama in our worlds. We did go through inspection on the property that we're currently purchasing, which is exciting, but I'm getting a little overwhelmed with how much money I want to spend on that property that I don't have.
Of course you are. Sarah, what did we say? Always 10% more.
Yeah, literally. This is like 50% more. Like
50% more than like what you would normally budget?
Yeah, I think I want to spend like 200 grand on this house.
I mean, just based on the look of it alone, like putting that much money into it, it would be insane.
It would be the A-frame in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really want to do that. So Ethan's just like telling me like, stay calm. Like I know we don't have the money for it, and I just don't want to bring an investor on for it. Like I want it to be the art project of the year, Like I want to bring on investor capital for things that are like exciting but like aren't Like, I want to put money in it that doesn't make sense to put into it.
Yeah, that you don't have
know?
to justify to an investor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that it like has the potential to produce the income to justify the spend, but it's just one of those projects, kind of like Orange Cadillac, where it was like there's nothing really supporting the decision other than like it is a work of art and it belongs to the public and the public needs to have access to it. Therefore, I will spend all my money on it.
Yeah. I know. I feel like if you needed to convince an investor in that aspect, you need to like, because I don't know, I know you don't want to do this, but you need to like pay somebody to pull up renderings and like
Hmm.
a thing that like walks them through the property to really like, you have to go above and beyond spending money to even get the vision across before you can get them to give you money.
Yeah.
And so it's like a bigger lift
Yeah.
than you're used to bringing in capital because typically it's like very clear in numbers.
Yeah.
And this one, it's like you have to get what's in your head on paper to
Yeah.
convince somebody else. And that's not always the easiest thing to do if they are not like of the same mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I just don't, I want it to be mine. And it's one of those things too where Ethan's like, do we really want this to be ours or is it just like the new shiny object? You know, like there's always more houses, but I'm like, I've never seen a house like this. Like,
It's crazy. Can you refinance any of your current properties?
yeah, but like the one that would make sense to refinance on would be probably Hale, and that refinance is half Caleb and Sarah's, half ours. And so then like their money would just be sitting there and we really want to refinance when all of us are ready to go in another project together. And then we could refinance on the lily pad, but the lily pad we just found out is also illegal. And so they haven't shut it down yet, but they probably will. And so if the lily pad sells, like we've got more than enough money to complete it. But if the lily pad doesn't sell, then I'm relying on the profit for lily pad to pay, like to make up the
Yeah.
difference, which I
That
will.
might be the thing that pushes you to sell it though, then. And like
Yeah.
quicker than maybe you would have.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. I don't know. Or if Ethan sells his business, or if we get 2 more investor projects, I think it would make the difference. So I just don't have it right now. And I'm like ready to spend all the money immediately. And Ethan's like, calm down, Sarah. There's no rush. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm rushed. I want to see the end product today.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we like had the GCs walk through it, and Ethan was like, "Wow, that list really exploded." And I'm like, "But was any of the list wrong? Like, you know that it needs all of this?" And he was
Needs. I love that word. Needs it.
"Needs it. The house deserves to be finished." So we're gonna try and finish it. But
I like that you're speaking in those terms.
Yes.
It needs it. It deserves it.
Look, there's no other option. None. We cannot cut corners. So anyway, when I'm broke at the end of this year, but I have a dope A-frame.
It's gonna make it back anyways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm trying to break the internet and my bank account all at the same time.
perfect. That's how it works.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into some of these Tip Tuesday questions. We've already answered these on our stories, but in a much shorter version. And a lot of these are my favorite questions that some of you guys, our listeners/followers, have asked us. So let's start with one.
I'm hoping you do them in the order that I wrote my answers down because I'll be flipping back and forth if not.
Perfect. What gave you the confidence? Is this the right one?
I think so.
Okay, good. Let me dip my toes in here. What gave you the confidence to invest initially when the area didn't have a lot of comps?
Ooh, okay. Yes, this is the first one, and I have notes. Do you want to start, or do you want me to go through my notes really
You
quick?
you go first.
Okay. I think that one very clear advantage that you and I have in this specific scenario is we're from here. So
Yeah.
we know how the people here travel, and we know what our age group is looking for specifically.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a huge leg up. Like we can argue all day long that you can invest anywhere in the US if you live somewhere, like remote investing is 100% possible, but knowing your market intimately is such a leg up.
Yeah.
And so I think that even though there wasn't data, we were like, oh, I already know how people travel. I know what I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for it, other people have to be looking for it. And I think that
Yes.
that's a nice advantage that we could use. There's, I mean, very clear things like data that we used from our design clients as backup. So just the confidence in design in general. I mean, we were confident in it, but like having the data of people that we worked for being like 30% increase minimum in my profit, I'm like, okay, if I'm looking at what the next person's making and increase that by 30%, like great.
Yeah.
That's even better.
Yeah.
And then that like the people who are next to me are doing well for their market. Like the top ones are like, okay, I'm in the green, so 30% more, I'm even more in the green. And then if I do comps on hot tubs and surrounding markets, okay, 10% more or
Yeah.
whatever. And so we're not only looking in our market specifically, I guess, if we're talking about hot tubs and stuff like that, like very clear things that we can comp, like a hot tub or a sauna or whatever else. We'll look in like surrounding markets and look at how they do compared to other houses in their markets and just take that data. So we're not going in completely data-less. That's not a word.
I think it is. Sounded good. I'm
Yeah.
convinced.
But we are like, I wrote down here, like in all capitals, there is something to be said about gut instinct.
Yeah.
And like we're looking at some houses that, and we could coin this term. Everything looked like grandma and grandpa's house.
Yeah.
And so seeing something that's not thoughtfully designed and there's no money put into amenities and they're still making money, in my head I'm like, okay, there's no way I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And so there is something to be said about gut instinct. We still do pull data and we pull data from surrounding markets and things like that. Like we're not going into it completely blind, but it is a little riskier than maybe your average real estate investor.
Yeah. And I want to say too, like I think the one caveat to gut instinct is I've seen so many people in the space, in Michigan in particular, because obviously that's where we're watching most prominently, is that people will go out and buy a lake house that is $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $1 million. And they're saying, okay, people like us are saying just design it well, photograph it well, add all the amenities. But if you buy too high, there is a cap on what people are willing to spend.
Oh, for sure.
And so, like, even though we are top in all of our markets, we're also going in and we're buying houses that are typically $400,000 and below. And so, if you can find a house that is $400,000 and below and outfit it to the nines with incredible amenities, incredible design, incredible photography, like, I don't care if the market is telling you you're going to make $20,000, $30,000, you're not. Like, that has been the case for us every single time. It doesn't matter where we plop these houses, as long as we're buying very conservatively and we're making sure that on the back end it is an experience that someone who lives full-time in $1 million home would enjoy this experience in a B&B with their family. That there's some magic there. But don't go out and buy a super expensive house in the middle of nowhere and expect it to print, because I just talked to a girl on Instagram a couple of days ago where she's like, I'm doing a new build and all in, it's going to be like a 3-bed, 2-bath house, but it's going to cost us over $500,000 to build it. And that's like before her furniture, before her amenities, before anything else. And I'm just like, I'm scared.
Yeah.
Scared for you. So
That definitely would scare me. Yeah, that is true. When we're looking at buying these houses, like the houses we buy look like grandma and grandpa's house when we get them.
yeah.
Like there's dog hair in the carpet that we have to
Yes.
tear up and we're painting, and like I think that maybe we don't necessarily talk about that like we
Yeah.
show the end product and like the before and afters are cool, but like the actual work that we put into them
Yeah.
to make them look a little better, because we are not going out and buying the new houses or the
No.
flipped houses or anything like
No.
that.
Or
We're buying,
even the crabby houses on Torch Lake. Like we're not spending an arm and a leg on the house.
yeah, we're being intentional about where we're buying and the price that we're buying at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked at the price that I got mine for being where it is, but
Yeah.
like instead of buying it directly on the water, I bought it on a channel.
Yeah.
So like that decision makes a difference in my price.
Yeah. Yeah. And like full transparency, it's like if we think back to our original like the original house, the Bitely Lake house that we purchased in Michigan, we still didn't have a good understanding of how to run numbers. Like there was so much about that house that was luck. Because the purchase price was $300,000 and that's all we could qualify for. Like if we could have qualified for more, like I would have bought a bigger house and that would have been a mistake, you know? But it was all we could qualify for, and so we just really had to pour our hearts and souls into the experience. But honestly, it was like part of it was just ignorance, which gave us the confidence. Gives us the confidence for a lot of things that we try out that either work or they don't.
Yeah.
So I was on a call earlier today with I'm in Heather Blankenship's mastermind, the Society of Entrepreneurial Women, and we were talking about wins and losses this year. And so many short-term rental hosts in that group were saying that they are selling their properties across the nation because they're just not producing the income they once were. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that this year. There's just and I can't see their properties, right? I don't know if they're high quality, low quality. I couldn't tell you if they're doing things correctly or not. But this industry is getting a lot more difficult to have success in, which is great for us, right? We know how to have success in it, and we know how to teach other people how to have success in it, but it is not buy the property, list it on Airbnb, and make money anymore. Like, that narrative is dead. You should not go into it without some sort of mentor, someone who can walk you through how to have a profitable B&B, because 9 times out of 10, if you don't know what you're doing in this arena now, it is not going to go in your favor. Like, it is not going to end pretty. So just find a mentor. And if you need a mentor, we're here for you. Okay, next question. How many times should I visit my property? Once a month? And this person was 2-hour drive away.
I have very strong opinions about this, but I also know people who have very strong opinions on the opposite side of what my opinion is.
Yes.
And so it depends on your strategy and the kind of experience that you want to give people. And I still think that I give my guests a high quality experience.
Yeah.
But I'll use like Rose, for example. She's the person who is the opposite of what I do, and she runs a very tight ship, and her hospitality is just like top tier goals hospitality, but she is showing up at her property for every single turnover.
Yes.
She is checking, or somebody is checking the cleans, but she's dropping off cookies.
Yeah.
She has games that are like special things for them to do at the end of their stay. She is very, very plugged in. And there's a reason that she gets so many repeat guests. There's a reason that she's almost completely direct booking at this point, all because of the experience that she gives them. And I love that strategy for her, but it's very like, there are things that like she can do, can't do, whatever, that come along with being that plugged into her property. And I live 4 hours from mine. So I go to mine once a quarter unless I want to go stay.
Yeah.
And mind you, even when I go stay, I'm doing stuff. Like I just wish that there was a way to show up at your property without doing things, like just relaxing, but it's just like really not that possible. At least not at the stage that I'm at.
Yeah.
But yeah, I go about once a quarter
Yeah.
to like check things and maybe swap out the towels or restock the silverware or something like that. But I trust my cleaner a lot to like tell me when things are wrong, and then if she doesn't, the guest sure as heck will.
You'll know.
Yeah. So I think that I was like a little more intentional with how far I did choose to have my property.
Yeah.
One, because the price of houses is a little bit better where I bought mine versus where I currently live.
So true.
But also like I have done a day trip up to my property before, because in July we had to like swap some stuff out and it was needed, but like that's a long day in the car, and I don't want to do that all the time, so it forces me to find other solutions.
Yeah.
And kind of be like taken out of it, and I just honestly don't have the time. Like, you create a whole new 9 to 5 for yourself if you put it in your backyard.
Yeah.
Which if you want this to be the thing that is taking up your time, do that.
Yeah.
That's just like not my goal. I have Carwells and now Carwell Mercantile Co. and a child that like take up my time. So
Yeah.
I don't think that there's like a right or wrong. I think it just depends on your strategy, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so much to say on this as well. I mean, if you guys have seen Rose's operation, your family's place in Ohio, it's one of a kind. Like, she really, like, you want to experience hospitality, if you want to experience like Midwest nostalgia, like, she has that honed in the most beautiful, thorough, well thought out way possible. But that's where she wants to spend her hours.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you and I are just in a phase where like we don't know where we want to spend our hours yet. Like, we're in our tasting phase. Like, I feel like I'm at the like business buffet, and like we're like trying all these like little side hustles to really figure out like what lights us up. And there's things about everything that lights us up, and there's things about everything that stresses us out. But it wouldn't be like, we would be stopping our growth if we had chose to have properties like Rose chose to have her properties in her backyard. And like Rose has her whole family involved, right? Like everybody, this is their family business. Like this is their active income, this is their stability, this is their security.
And she is continuing to grow, just like
Yes.
in the way that she wants to.
Yes.
And there is not a single thing that goes on at that property that she doesn't know about.
Yes.
Like when she have her tell you about the pond color, like she knows that down to a T. So
Yeah.
that like she runs a very tight ship because of that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So I'll be curious to see if like you or I, when it comes time to like find the thing that is like our legacy, like, we're little infants in this game of business. And so I feel like when we find the thing that like really lights us up in the way that like Rose's business lights her up, I'll be curious to see if we'll be more hands-on or less hands-on with it. And then in the same breath, I'm like, okay, well, do I ever want my hours to be dictated by one thing, or do I always want to like try and outsource it as like fast as humanly possible and like continue? I don't know.
Yeah. I think about like I would love to have gift baskets for every single guest. Like
Yeah.
when I look at Rose's thing, I want to be able to achieve that.
Yeah.
But I also want to hand write every single note that goes into shipping the products that are selling in our e-commerce business. So like I want all of the things to be that level, and like I just can't be the person who does all of it. So
Yeah.
I have to decide which one I want more, and then maybe hire somebody to be that person for the other thing, but it's still not me.
Yes, you can have anything you want for the right price.
Yep.
So we need to make more money.
More money.
Scale.
Everything costs more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we went to our property that's our furthest property away, that's 3.5 hours from where we live last week, and we haven't been there since March. No, April. Sometime in the spring, whenever we were like starting to do the spring flip, was the last time that we were there. Last time anyone was there, outside of our cleaners and our guests. And I was like, dang, this cleaner rocks. Like it looked like literally opening the cleaning closet, it was just in pristine, fully stocked, everything's faced the right way position. Like I was like, whoa. The only thing that we had to do was the bistro lights in the back, like half of them were out, right? And so it's like the cleaner's there from 10 to 4. Like she's not looking at the bistro lights because it's not dark ever when she's there. And so we had an electrician come out and like fix that. But other than that, I mean, it was just in pristine condition. So it is possible, I think, to take your hands out of it. I don't think you have to be hands-on with it, but there is that consistency that you will lose a little bit of, at least, by not having your hands in it every single day, which is fine. It's fine to get 4 stars every now and again because half the hot tub water is gone.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like even if you have a great cleaner, because from everything I've heard about this cleaner, that she is fantastic, but there's like a level to what she cares about, right? Like there's going to be some things that happen at the property that she's going to be like, hey, this is happening. I'm not fixing it.
Yeah.
Because it's not her job
Yeah.
to care about that kind of stuff. Like I care that my snowplow guy, he like pushed snow and like ruined where the mulch is at my property. I'm like, that doesn't look good. Does he care? No. He plowed the snow and he left. And so like now I'm the one who has to go and fix the thing, but it's like only somebody's job to operate within a specific scope, and only one person cares about all of the scope.
Yeah.
And that's you.
Yep. Oh, this is like kind of a side tangent here a little bit, but I got a text message on 9 a.m. Christmas morning from my neighbor at Bitely, who's currently selling his property, and Bitely will get shut down in the near future. And he's like, dog pooped in my yard. Merry Christmas. Have someone come clean it up. I was like, I still haven't replied. I'm like, I'm literally, no.
Sir, 9
like,
a.m.
9 a.m. and you're selling your property and we're going to be selling our property. Like, we don't have to do this at the tail end. Like, if I was trying to maintain a relationship with you, sure, Christmas morning, I'd respond, but I'm not. So you won't get a reply.
I just think that there's zero chance that his dog doesn't come in your yard sometimes.
His dog died, but.
Oh, sad.
Yeah. Maybe
Okay,
that's part of
it did.
It did. And his dog was a Rottweiler, so it had big poops, but.
Oh.
But yeah, he's not happy. But add it to the list.
Yeah, neighbors are a whole separate issue. We'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, speaking of neighbors, neighboring township starts to ban short-term rentals on a rezone. Oh, on residential zone. Target township has no rule, still invest. So this person is looking at a property the neighboring township is banning STRs, what do they do? Would we still invest?
I have recent information on this that I think is like valid and would make me pause a little bit more.
Okay.
My planning commission is very specifically looking at surrounding township
Yeah.
and county regulation. Like they're looking all over the state, but they're very, very in depth looking at ones that are directly next to them.
Yeah.
But it's not, I don't want to say it's 100% a bad thing because they're viewing this as like if the township bans it and we don't ban it, it means more people will buy homes in our township. They're viewing
Yeah.
it in that aspect. Not every township is going to view it like this, but like
Yep.
I feel lucky that mine does. So they're like, okay, can we benefit from having some regulation, but not ban it like these people did because then more people are going to want to purchase over here. And so I would just be more on top of asking questions to those people.
Yep.
It wouldn't turn me away 100%, but I would be maybe a little more cautious. I would like do my due diligence a little more than I would maybe if they either already had regulation or there was nothing going on around them. But I just have noticed, and like I know other townships and planning commissions and city councils are doing the same thing. They're looking at people around them. So just get a pulse on their opinion about it. Like some of them are going to be like mine and be like, okay, if we ban it completely, that just lowers the amount of people coming here. But if we open it completely, that also lowers the amount of people coming here. So they're being rational about it, but not all of them are going to be rational about it. So you just have to like be willing to have the conversations. I think I said this maybe on the last episode, but I was talking to one of our previous mentees and I was like, if you are going into like a market like that, you have to be willing to be the person to have the conversation and show up to the meetings and
Yeah.
like be the person who's like running the regulation train if you're going to get into those markets, because if you're not doing it, somebody else might be doing it and they might not be operating at the level that you would want. And then that just means like other bad hosts could get into the market, then the reputation is ruined and then it gets taken away completely. So,
Yep. Or the only people who are going to be there is people who are advocating against it.
yep.
Yeah. I second all of that. What I would say is, like, for example, in the townships that we're in that are developing regulation, yes, they are looking at neighboring regulation. You can gauge. I don't care if they're mid-regulation. I don't care if they've started regulation. You can gauge which direction it's going to go immediately when you meet and gather the opinions of the person who is making the decisions. And so if they are anti-short-term rental, I don't care if there's a million short-term rentals operating currently that are bringing a lot of income into the town. If that decision maker is anti-Airbnb, do not. And I don't care if it's legal currently, don't invest. I wouldn't. If you walk into a township, because now this is what we're doing at this point, like the A-frame project that I'm talking about that we're moving forward with here in Michigan. The reason we felt confident doing it in all of the regulation changes is because we went into the city hall and I just came in hot. I'm like, listen here, who do I need to talk to? And I need it in writing. I need it to say this. I need you to guarantee me that this, like, if you develop regulation on the back end, like, we're happy to develop it with you, but it will not get shut down. It will be grandfathered in. Like, and so, in the experience of just having 3 properties go through regulation changes this year, you can reach out to a real estate attorney and you can have them send you an email of something that would be best case scenario for you to hold your argument against the township or the city or the county or whoever's trying to shut B&Bs down in the future, saying that like you did all your proper due diligence and you got the okay and they can't shut you down after the fact. That doesn't always work because Park Township has all of that. Like Park Township here in Michigan has been going through a ton of a big lawsuit with all the short-term rental hosts. And even with some of the people having proof that they had contacted the city on the front end, they're still saying, nope, we're shutting them down. But the particular thing about this township that we're entering into for this A-frame is there's no zoning at all. So like there is no residential zone, there is no commercial zone, there is no multifamily zone, there is no businesses, there is nothing. So
Is that considered unincorporated?
it's considered unincorporated. So any change that's made to it after the fact, whatever existed there, is grandfathered in, which is why they were like, look, you could tear this thing down and put a Dollar Tree here and nobody could tell you otherwise.
Please don't do that.
I'm not in the Dollar Tree game. but but that's what gave us the confidence to move forward on this next project. So still invest. Honestly, the neighboring township banning it would not be a no-go for me. I would dig deeper. I would like go in person, not over the phone, get it in writing afterward, but go in person, shake the people's hand, explain what you want to do, ask them to put it in writing, tell them that you're going to be a professional host. Like, just make it ultra, 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 ultra clear what you're doing. Be very open with them. And if they welcome you with open arms, you probably won't have issues on the back end. But if they do not welcome you with open arms and they're like, we hate short-term rentals and you can do it, but we know that down the road we're going to be developing regulation and I wouldn't, like, just don't. Like, save yourself and
Don't get yourself into a 30-year mortgage in
Yeah.
those scenarios. But
Yes.
also, if you're like listing all of these things about I'm going to be a professional host and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to operate this way, you have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to like actually follow through in operating that way, because when people like make all these promises and then don't follow through, it ruins the reputation for
Everybody else.
everybody across the industry. And
Yep.
that's just like the complete opposite of what we're trying to do. Not only are we trying to benefit ourselves, but like we're trying to increase the reputation of the short-term rental industry in
Yes.
general.
Yeah. God. Yeah. Like with Lily Township in Bitely, we have been going through regulation changes for now a year and a half there. And immediately after we started those regulation changes, one of the hosts that was like had a property like 3 or 4 down from mine, he started a website called Lily Township is Corrupt and started calling all the city council members bigots, racists, like just all this crazy stuff, which like whether it's true or not, I don't know. I don't know the city council members, right? But like that's not helping the scenario. And like this guy was like recognized in a magazine as like broker of the year or something for like it was just one of those things that I was like I've never seen anyone handle themselves. He took the petty path in the most pettiest way possible. And I just was like, what did you think that was going to do? Yeah. Like, did you think you were going to get your way by like just absolutely crapping on everybody who is making the decisions on how this is going to turn out? And so, yeah, if you're going through regulation changes, like, please, for the love of God, do not bring teenager energy into those meetings. Like, just don't go if that's you. Like, don't go. Let the professionals handle it, or go and be a professional and handle it objectively and correctly, please, for the rest of us.
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay, let's do next question. Oops, I started editing this question and that's not what I wanted at all. Okay. Airbnb bust or thinning the herd? Which is happening?
Do you want to say
No, go ahead.
Thinning the herd. 100%. And I understand, I think, like, news-wise and headline-wise, why the Airbnb bus thing is, like, getting traction, right? Like, nothing's better than something, like, falling apart, right, in the news. And so I get why that's such a big deal. And especially when you see so many of them shutting down.
Yeah.
Like, of course, people are going to start to get scared. But if we dig a little deeper and look at the ones that are shutting down, let's, like, start comparing and, like, understanding that if you look at theirs versus somebody else's in their same market, like, there's a reason the people that only have a single bed frame and no nightstands and no rugs and make people bring their own linens are shutting down versus the ones that are providing hot tubs and coffee and spices and all of that. Like, I just think that it again, people who have the mic are the loudest, right? And so you have to look past that. There's just like no way to get around the news articles or whatever, but you have to dive deeper into it with any topic in the news, really, but like this one specifically.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that, you know, inflation has happened, houses have skyrocketed in price, interest rates are high, so like the selection of viable properties that could be profitable B&Bs is so much smaller than it was 3 years ago.
And the people who are traveling different. So it's a completely different atmosphere for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you do it in a professional way and you understand how to run those numbers, like, no, it's not Airbnb bust. Like, I think the idea with Airbnb bust is that people who have existing B&Bs no longer are making income, and that absolutely is thinning the herd. The ladies that I was on the call with today that were like selling their properties, they bought them in like the last year and a half. And I think what's happening is that a lot of people who are selling turnkey B&Bs that have been profitable for years, the hosts are seeing a huge decline because they've got a crappy product, and they've got a product that was working in 2020 and 2021 that now isn't. And they're trying to offload it, and they're taking their 2020 and 2021 numbers and saying like, look, this is what this is producing, but it didn't produce it in 2023 and 2024. And so now I'm panicking, and I want to offload to someone who's going to have a higher interest rate, who's not going to put any money into this because they think it's a turnkey B&B, and they're going to be stuck with the problem. And we're seeing that happen a lot. Like overinflated numbers. If you are trying to buy a turnkey B&B in today's market, I would be extremely cautious. I would be extremely cautious with what you're being told that property is making, because it's probably not making that anymore. And there's a reason that person is selling.
Yeah. If they're not willing to give you the last year's numbers, walk immediately.
Yeah, walk immediately.
There's no way that they're being honest with you if they're not willing to give you the previous, like this most recent year's numbers.
Yes, they're pushing their pain on you.
Yes.
With that being said, there are we've seen people in our mentorship buy existing B&Bs that have just been really crappily run, crappily designed, crappily photographed, and now they're super profitable.
I
So
was just going to say that. Yeah. If you see the potential and you're like, you're operating this real bad
yeah,
and we can improve it, and then there is like that room for error or whatever, then I say still look into it, but I still would want the previous year's numbers. I still want to see like, what am I starting with?
Yeah.
And then what can I like go up from there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would buy Michigan lake houses all day long. If any of you have Michigan lake houses that are like sub $400 or $400,000 that you want to offload to us, call me.
Sub $400. Yes, please.
$400,000. All right, so we have a few more questions here, but would you buy a house in Michigan if it wasn't on a lake? Oh, the irony of me doing that call to action and this being the next this next question.
I would, and I think that you have a little bit of a different opinion than me on this because you're like very specific about lake houses. I would only if they, and again, I'm using a word that's like not a word in here. If there's another equally valuable non-addable amenity, non-addable is not a word, but like if there's another amenity that like you can't purchase and put on the property, it just comes with the property itself.
Yes.
Then yes, I would consider buying something that's not a lake house. So whether that be a view, whether it be like land with certain like snowmobiling trails or like something like that that comes with what you're purchasing, or like the house is so unique that you would like people would go to it just because of the aesthetic of the house, then I would. But like the lake is just this amenity that comes with the purchase of the home that like benefits it so much. And then I would have to have the budget to create the destination. So my budget would need to be higher probably than it would be for a lake house, which sounds funny because like you think you're buying a lake house and you need the highest budget, but my budget would need to be higher if it wasn't a lake house because then I need to put that much more money into it to bring people to that area.
Yeah. Second, all of that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would buy a house that's not on a lake. I mean, we're sitting here in Grand Haven, and we were looking at two houses that are for sale here in Grand Haven. And ironically, like Grand Haven has just awful B&Bs. Like they're so bad.
But I don't think that's the thing is I don't think they need to be great because people come here anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the direction I was going. Like I totally agree with you on purchasing properties that have like Orange Cadillac and this A-frame that I'm currently closing on. Neither of those are lake houses. But there is something about walking into a work of art and feeling like the public needs to see it, which is the case with Orange Cadillac and the case with this soon-to-be project that we're taking on, where it's just got the wow. It's just got it. You know, it's got that it factor that makes it the destination itself, that we would never be able to afford. Like the window in the A-frame specifically is something that we would never be able to afford if we were doing something ground up. Like even if we were doing a ground up A-frame in the middle of nowhere, like there's no way that I could make the numbers work to justify like installing that window. With that being said, it's like I would invest in a property in Michigan, not on a lake if it were in a tourist destination as well that didn't have a wow factor. Like I would look at South Haven, I would look at Ann Arbor, I would look at East Lansing, Traverse City,
Frankenmuth is one that I think is a
Frankenmuth.
good one.
Yeah, there's like some destinations in Michigan that the properties absolutely do not have to be on the water to still pull great numbers. You just have to get really clear on the guest avatar. Like for example, this is like something that I'm just shocked hasn't come on the market yet. There is not a single bachelorette themed B&B in Traverse City. Not a single one,
Yeah, that's wild.
which is crazy. That's like Michigan's bachelorette area, you know? So it's like if somebody wanted to buy a big house 15 minutes outside of Traverse City and turn it into this like Barbie house, like that would crush.
Torch Lake is kind of the same. It's
Torch Lake
hard.
was same, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to find because like I had my bachelorette party, but then I had a friend have a bachelorette party up there, and nothing is on the lake. Which I don't know the regulation there. I think you can't have short-term rentals on the lake, and they have to be.
You can. I don't know where. I think there's two or three different counties in that area. But like Water Camp, the brand, I don't know who runs that, but she has properties on Torch Lake on Airbnb for years.
Because there's this house that's partially built, and it's been for sale for a while because it's partially built, but it looks like a Hobbit home.
Okay.
It's the most stunning thing I've ever seen, and like the build of the house in general, in my opinion, like even if it's not done, it's worth buying and finishing because like finding somebody to build that same look would be so hard, and like it looks insane. But they're selling just like a partially finished house for like maybe like $3.5 million or something like that.
Okay.
But it's huge and it's on Torch Lake. And I'm like, that would be the perfect B&B aesthetic alone, and it's on Torch Lake. But I thought that the regulation, but yeah, Torch Lake is another one where there's like no actual bachelor or bachelorette houses. There's like big houses that maybe host a decent amount of people, but not like very specifically themed.
Yes. And you know that every single week, all summer long, there's bachelorette and bachelor parties up there. So yeah, it just has to be a specific, I think if you understand your guest avatar, and also lake houses, that encompasses all the guest avatars in Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got two more questions here. How do you balance being best friends and business partners?
I don't know if it's balance. I think that they've blended.
Yeah.
I don't know that we balance it. And maybe that's the wrong way to do it. And maybe at different stages of life, it will be different. But I do think that like our work relationship and our friendship are very much intertwined at this point.
Yeah.
I think like if you ask any of our friends outside, they'll be like, you guys spend so much time together, like best friends hanging out all the time.
Yeah.
And it's because we're literally mostly working all the time, but it looks like our job is fun. And so it looks like we just get to hang out.
Yeah.
So I think we're being a little more intentional about balancing the best friends part, but we just like have known each other for so long. We know how the other, like how each other operates. And so I just think that like it's blended. And if we both get overwhelmed with the work, like I know if you're not responding to my text messages, that you're just overwhelmed, and like I'll talk to you the next day, or like little things like that maybe like a business partner wouldn't know, but a best friend does. And so I'm like, okay, just like don't bug her, or continue to bug her and she'll get back to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like little things like that. But I don't think it's balanced. I think it's blended. And I think that that's the distinction.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I could talk for hours on this as well. I think like at our core, we want to hang out and be in each other's lives more than we want the success of the business. And like, I want this to succeed so bad. Like I called Emily on Friday before our Christmas party and just spiraled for like 4 hours because I was like, what are we doing here? Like
You were due for one anyways.
I was so due for one.
I know, I've been waiting.
But I think that like I've seen different seasons in our lives kind of cycle through friends, right? Like you're in a different season than me, and being a mom, you and Dale both are in a different season than me. And so I think us working together gives us a consistent season all the time. And I'm really appreciative of that over like, oh, could you make more money if you didn't have me? Or, oh, could I make more money if I didn't have you? Or like whatever the case may be. It's just like, I, to my core, want community and support, and your specific community and support more than I want anything else. And so I think it makes everything else just like it is what it is, you know?
Mhm.
So I don't know. I don't know that, yeah, I totally agree that there's not a balance though. Like if you're around me in particular, we're talking work.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is, if I'm your friend right now, it's because we align with work.
Yeah. I do think that because we've been through so many different seasons too, it's like even though we are in a different season right now and I am changing the way I approach work, I'm changing the way I approach like the time I even give to you because of like the things that I have and you're more understanding of that because of the seasons of life we've been through.
Yeah.
We're like another business partner like who didn't know each other in that way might get like offended or be like, "Oh my gosh, we need to look at this differently." And you just trust that like I'm still getting the work done.
Hmm.
I'm still making it happen. It just looks different because I'm in a different season of life.
Yeah.
I think there's just like more natural understanding as we adapt and change.
Yeah. And I would say, I think one of the biggest things with that is an ease of anxiety for me in working with you is I know that you're giving your best all the time. Like, and your best all the time doesn't mean like it's 110% every single day. And like things are getting checked off the list every single day and we're moving at the most efficient pace as possible. It's just that like we have ups and downs and our husbands have ups and downs and life circumstances bring ups and downs. But like, I know that you're going to make this a priority as much as you possibly can in your life. And I don't need to babysit you.
Mhm.
And that's the same for you with me. And so I just feel like we've like struggled bringing anyone else on because all of a sudden we're like, oh, well, doesn't everyone function that way? You know, like why do we have to babysit other people? Like I don't have to babysit you, you don't have to babysit me, um but I feel like that's a huge win in working together that like I don't care if another business partner could make us more money in another life. It's like I don't want to be babysat. I feel like you're patient with me, I'm patient with you. Like it keeps the day to day really consistent, really healthy, and the money will come.
Yeah, I think that like maybe I think you maybe said this, but like our growth is slower because of the way that we operate.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm okay with that. And maybe that's
Same.
like it definitely is speaking from a place of privilege, but like
Yeah.
I'm okay with slower growth and just figuring it out and maybe things flop if we get to continue to operate this way.
Yeah.
I the other day I woke up in the morning and I woke up and I got Oz up and I made him breakfast and I was like overwhelmed with my checklist for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped and I was like, nope, I'm going to sit in gratitude for the fact that there are other moms who woke up this morning, fed their kids, took them to daycare, and they're sitting at their 9 to 5 right now. And I'm
Yeah.
sitting here feeding my son breakfast and I don't have to start work until I want to start work.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will do whatever it takes to continue that
Yeah.
specifically. And then I also get to work with my best friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
If that means I like grow at a slower rate, okay.
Yeah. And in comparison to what, you know?
Yeah.
Like in comparison to what? So yeah. And it helps that we're opposite, you know, like don't I think that that's a big thing that we don't talk about enough on like people who are looking at us, maybe thinking about starting a business with their best friend, like just at the like know your strengths and weaknesses and appreciate your weaknesses and how that other person makes up for them.
Yes.
Okay, last question as we wrap this episode up. This is kind of a fun one. How do you decide what to improve or upgrade at each property, and what % of revenue do you dedicate to this?
Year 1 and 2, 100% of revenue goes back into the property. I have not pulled one single penny
Yeah.
from my property in year 1, and I likely won't in year 2. Um, and I just don't. For me, it's like ever changing. If
Yeah.
I start needing the money in my day to day, maybe it means that the property doesn't get the upgrades that like are in my head, but
Yeah.
in theory, this is like a long game for me. I'm not like trying to build this short-term rental for 5 years and then sell it unless I can sell it for like a huge profit.
Yeah.
So if I have to push the whatever sauna, for example, like a year or two because I need the personal income, then cool, I'll start pulling the profit. But like if I don't need it, I will continue reinvesting because I'm just thinking of the experience and I care about the hospitality and I want my guests to have a good experience and I want to go and
I want the sauna.
I want the sauna and I want the hot tub and I want the new deck for the house that I bought that I get to go and stay at. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I right now, like the very straightforward answer is 100% goes back into the property for at least the first 2 years and then
Yeah.
influx from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a raw answer, but it's so, so accurate. Like the first 12 grand that we made off of hail, we reinvested it because the septic system went out and it literally cost us $11,800. So I think that if you don't have improvements that you're thinking about investing in your property, like you need to be taking that first year's profits and keeping them as reserves anyway, unless there's a septic system or unless all of a sudden you get into a legal war with your neighbor or unless regulation changes and all of a sudden you have to sell at a loss or like whatever. It's an investment, right? Like I would like to think that the best case scenario is you don't think about your Airbnb profit any different than you would your stocks growing. Like you take that money out, you're leaving yourself in a lot of risk and it's not going to continue growing. And so, yeah, I think like the first couple of years, we've invested probably 20 grand back into each property and not on things like repairing things. Like if you do everything your first run of bringing an Airbnb to life and you install the sauna and you install the cold plunges and you do the hot tub and you have a really healthy budget for your first launch, then like maybe you don't need to reinvest. But even so, it's like don't spend that money either. Like keep it and reinvest it into another property. Like the idea is that this is something that continues to grow, not like grows and then stops. And all of a sudden you've got, 20, 30, 40 grand extra that you're making up at this B&B that you're spending 100% of. So it just depends. But I think Emily and I both are of the mindset that like, our husbands make the money that we live on and we make the money grow. And so we're just always looking at ways to do that. And the fun part about investing in this way is that we get to enjoy the things that we invest in. Like we get to enjoy the saunas and the decks and the hot tubs and the lifestyle component that comes along with these B&Bs that you just don't get with stocks. So make super smart decisions with where you're pouring that money, especially in the first couple of years. Like do not go buy a new car with it. Do not go blow it on, don't like completely drain that account and go put it in another B&B and leave your current B&B with a $0 balance. Like just slow and steady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also think about this from like somebody who's in a 9 to 5 who's like trying to get out of their 9 to 5 and they're looking at the income in that way. The question in the living room, the chat that we have today was like advice to somebody who's like trying to get out of their 9 to 5 and become a full-time investor. And I always think about like we jumped into this or I fell into this without having to replace a 9 to 5 income, right? Like I was like, I got to make money. So here we go. I'm doing this. And you did replace your 9 to 5 income with one property. But if you rely on your 9 to 5 income for your bills, you can't jump out after one property because all you're doing is replacing your bills and then you have no extra money coming in to continue investing.
Yeah.
And so and my answer to that was like, you have to replace your 9 to 5 and then some.
Yeah.
To then be able to get out of that. And so like I think of that in like the reinvesting too. Like you maybe replaced your 9 to 5, but you got to have the money to reinvest. So you've got to be like considering that when you're looking at the profit that you're going to make on a property. And so do you jump out because you replaced your 9 to 5 and then you get a job that's in the short-term rental world and then you continue making money that way, or what? You have to be like really strategic about it. But if you don't have the money to reinvest, you'll stop. And we always say that like after one, you're gonna want to keep going. There's like nobody we know that stops at one.
Yeah. Yes. Please, for the love of God, do not get into this thinking that this is going to take you out of your 9 to 5 and you're just going to be chilling full time. Like that is absolutely not what we're doing. That's not what anybody else is doing. Like it does give you a ton of flexibility in your life. But the idea that you're going to get one or two properties that replace your 9 to 5 income, you're going to outsource the management and then you're going to go like travel full time. Unless you're starting like a travel blogging business or you're like making money from travel content or working with, I don't know, hotels to shoot
You've gotten
content.
rid of every single expense in your life.
Yeah, like you can go at it that way, but I think that there's just a much longer process of like building a life that you're excited by, and I don't think anyone on this planet is actually truly fulfilled by like building something and then sitting on the couch and having it be passive and it replacing their 9 to 5 and this be their new 9 to 5. So, yeah, I would say, I mean, if you've got your B&B up and running and you really want to get out of that 9 to 5, I think relying on the B&B income to replace your 9 to 5 income wholly, I think is the slowest possible way to go about it. I think you bringing a B&B to life gives you a lot of security in leaving your 9 to 5, but then you also just developed an entire skill set bringing that B&B to life, where you could plug into any one little piece of the B&B curation process and make that a business. Like, you can do design, you can do project management, you can do pricing, you can do property management, you can do photography, you can do saunas, you could do whatever. You can make games for Airbnb. Like, there is just unlimited things, unlimited businesses to build around the Airbnb industry because it's so new. I feel like that's really the unlock that lets people out of their 9 to 5s, because now they've got working income along with their investment. But I don't think the investment itself typically becomes the thing that replaces your 9 to 5 income. So that was a tangent on.
Yes.
We got sidetracked on that question, but
okay.
Be smart.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think that's the last question for today. So for our listeners, if you want a question covered on the podcast, like I said, every single Tuesday we put up a question box on our Instagram stories, and we're going to be picking our favorite ones to answer. Maybe slide into our DMs and tell us this is one that you'd want a long-winded answer for, just to like note it for us. Like, if you're asking really simple questions that are one-word answers, they're not going to be covered on the podcast. They will be covered on stories, and we save all of those stories on our highlights on our Instagram. But I think we're going to be doing more of these, of just general Q&A, B&B, content creation, running a business with your best friend episodes. So we're super excited to bring the podcast back in 2025. And thanks for listening.
And rate and review us wherever you guys are listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up this video and subscribe.
Yes, please.
I'll get better at saying all those things as time goes on.
So fair. All right, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.